In 1997, Jacob Miller took a seasonal job at Ashwood Farm, a family-owned pumpkin patch just outside town. The farm was known for its annual Halloween festival, drawing crowds with hayrides, bonfires, and a sprawling pumpkin field that stretched into the woods. But among locals, there were darker stories. They claimed the farm was cursed, because decades earlier, a drifter had been found dead among the pumpkins, his body impaled on a broken scarecrow pole. Since then, strange accidents plagued the patch, yet the family never closed it. Jacob didn't believe in curses. On Halloween night, he volunteered to stay late, helping clean up after the festival. Most of the guests had left, and the farm was eerily silent except for the rustle of wind through the cornstalks. Carrying a flashlight, Jacob trudged toward the far edge of the pumpkin patch, where he noticed several jack-o'-lanterns glowing faintly. They weren't supposed to be there. Management never left lit candles unattended. As he drew closer, he froze. Each pumpkin bore a face twisted in grotesque detail, not fun, silly carvings, but sharp teeth, bulging eyes, and mouths stretched too wide. Worse, the flames inside weren't flickering candles. They pulsed red, like beating hearts. Jacob backed away, but his foot caught on a vine that coiled unnaturally around his ankle. He yanked it off, heart pounding. The pumpkins' faces all seemed to turn toward him at once. Then came the sound, low, guttural laughter rising from the soil itself. He spun and ran, but the field seemed endless. The rows stretched farther and farther, the farmhouse lights disappearing behind him. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a scarecrow. But it wasn't the farm's usual burlap figure. This one had a carved pumpkin head glowing blood red, its jagged grin dripping waxy fluid. Its straw arms twitched as though something living was inside. Before Jacob could react, the scarecrow lurched forward. He ran blindly, vines snagging at his legs. Behind him, more scarecrows emerged, each crowned with a burning jack-o'-lantern. Their laughter filled the air, mingling with the rustling vines. Jacob's flashlight sputtered, then died. He sprinted toward what he thought was the exit, but instead he burst into a clearing where dozens of pumpkins circled him, their fiery eyes glaring. The ground trembled, and a massive figure rose, a towering scarecrow stitched from dozens of pumpkin vines, its head an enormous jack-o'-lantern, with fire raging inside. It bellowed, the sound shaking Jacob's chest. He collapsed, covering his ears. The next morning, workers found Jacob unconscious at the far end of the field, tangled in vines. He never returned to the farm. He swore he'd heard the drifter's voice whispering inside the pumpkins, begging to be freed. The farm closed a few years later after another unexplained accident, and to this day, the fields remain abandoned. Locals say that if you wander into Ashwood Farm on Halloween, you'll hear the laughter of pumpkins waiting to claim another soul. Halloween night in 2003 was supposed to be like every other year for 16-year-old Megan. She and her best friends had dressed up as witches and vampires, daring each other to knock on the scariest houses in their small Illinois town. At the far end of Ridgeway Lane, there stood an old Victorian house, shrouded in tall hedges and ivy. For decades, neighbors whispered about the place being haunted. They said the woman who once lived there disappeared on Halloween night in the 1950s, leaving her dinner table set for guests who never came. The house remained locked and untouched ever since, yet every Halloween, without fail, a single light glowed faintly from the upstairs window. The group laughed nervously as Megan suggested they try trick-or-treating at the infamous house. The closer they walked, the more the night air seemed to thicken, almost pressing against their skin. No decorations lined the porch, no pumpkins flickered. The house was silent except for the wind rattling broken shutters. Still, the golden glow from the second floor flickered steadily, like a candle someone had left burning. Against her friend's protests, Megan climbed the creaking steps and knocked. The wood groaned under her hand. Nothing. But when she turned the knob, the door swung inward with a long, low squeal. The house smelled of damp wood and iron. Faded wallpaper curled at the corners, and a staircase stretched into darkness. Megan called out nervously, "Hello. Trick or treat?" Her voice echoed unnaturally, as though dozens of voices whispered the words back to her. They almost left, until the sound of footsteps creaked above them. Slow, deliberate, and heavy. Someone was up there. Convinced it was a squatter or maybe even another prankster, the teens climbed the stairs. The candlelight from the second-floor room beckoned, flickering under a half-closed door. When Megan nudged it open, they froze. Inside, the room looked preserved in another time. Lace curtains, an antique bed, a vanity with cracked perfume bottles, all coated in dust. But in the center sat a dining table, fully set with plates, cutlery, and goblets. At each seat lay a small pumpkin, carved with wide, grinning faces. The candle at the center burned with a flame that hissed, though there was no breeze. Then, the chairs scraped back. One by one. No one was touching them. The pumpkin's grins seemed to widen, their shadows stretching across the walls like clawed hands. Megan screamed as a woman's reflection appeared in the vanity mirror, gaunt, pale, her black dress torn, her eyes hollow sockets. She lifted a skeletal finger and pointed directly at Megan. The door slammed behind them. The group scrambled, but the air had grown suffocating, thick with rot. Whispering voices overlapped in every direction, chanting words none of them understood. Megan tried to yank the door open, but her hand burned like ice where she touched the knob. In the mirror, the woman's mouth opened unnaturally wide, her scream silent yet deafening in their minds. At last, the door flung itself open, and the teens bolted into the night. They didn't stop running until Ridgeway Lane vanished behind them. When they finally dared to look back, the house was completely dark, the upstairs window empty. The next morning, when Megan returned in daylight, the house was gone. Where it once stood was nothing but an empty, overgrown lot. Yet every Halloween since, she swears she sees that single flicker of light at the end of Ridgeway Lane, daring her to return. Halloween of 2011 was colder than usual, and friends Alyssa and Brandon decided to spend the night exploring Whitmore Cemetery. The graveyard dated back to the early 1800s, its headstones cracked and tilted, some sinking into the earth. It was said that on Halloween, the spirits roamed freely, and anyone foolish enough to wander the grounds risked bringing something back with them. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they squeezed through the rusted gate just before midnight. The air inside felt heavier, as if sound itself was muffled. No insects, no birds, only the crunch of their boots on dead leaves. They passed rows of crumbling graves until they found the oldest section, where a giant stone angel loomed, its face eroded by time. Legends claimed the angel wept blood on Halloween night. They set up their cameras, laughing nervously. Brandon waved his flashlight over the angel's face and froze. A dark streak trickled from its hollow eyes. Alyssa touched it with trembling fingers. It was wet. Not paint, not rain. Something thicker. Suddenly, Brandon's flashlight died. In the dark, Alyssa heard whispers circling them, like dozens of voices speaking at once. She gripped Brandon's arm, but when the light flicked back on, he was gone. The only trace was his camera, lying shattered at her feet. Panicked, she searched the rows of graves, calling his name. The whispers grew louder, now sounding like children giggling. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw shadows darting between headstones. Then she saw him, Brandon, standing perfectly still near an open grave. Relieved, she ran toward him, but when she touched his shoulder, his skin was ice cold. His head turned slowly, eyes vacant, lips moving soundlessly. From the grave behind him, skeletal hands clawed out, grasping the dirt. Dozens of figures rose from the earth, their forms tattered and decayed, eyes glowing faintly. Alyssa screamed, dragging Brandon away, but he moved stiffly, like a puppet. The corpses shuffled closer, their mouths opening in a moaning chorus. They ran toward the gates, but every path twisted back into the same rows of graves. The angel loomed again ahead, but now its stone wings stretched wide, shadow swallowing the ground. From its chest, a crack split open, and a blinding red light poured out. The whispering grew deafening. Alyssa collapsed, clutching her ears. The next morning, caretakers found her wandering outside the cemetery walls, her hair turned stark white, her eyes distant. Brandon was never found. Some say he still wanders Whitmore Cemetery on Halloween night, a silent figure near the angel, waiting for his friend to return.